My guest this week is another interesting one, the Reverend Marin Walker, previously known as his previous guise as Chief Superintendent Marin Walker, and way back in 1984 to about 12 of us that might listen to this as Spider, which I've already broken the rule I said I wasn't going to do. Marin, welcome.
Welcome, Dave. Yeah, we haven't seen each other face to face for a few years now, so
No, it's been a while.
We were in the same dorm together back in 1984 in the police cadet.
Let's not give too many secrets away that we slept in neighbouring beds for quite a long period of time.
Yeah, anyway, moving on.
So we won't give too much away to that. But I always start these off with just asking my guests to introduce themselves with a 30-second bio. Give us the history of your work career and leadership career in about 30 seconds.
Wow. Okay. So like you, Dave, I was a policeman in London and in Sussex, and did a range of different jobs. Ended up as a chief superintendent, which I think superintendent in America, doesn't it mean like the janitor? Is that what you call it? Which is probably,
you were the head janitor.
Head janitor, yeah. So which is kind of I don't know what the equivalent is in America, but so I was responsible for the county of West Sussex, which is what's that, 750,000 people, with a staff of 1,400 people, that kind of size. And yeah, my role was responsible for the policing of that area. And in amongst that also, I had some other roles. So the way that British policing works is that we have a portfolio role. So I had a portfolio roles in dealing with firearms incidents. So incidents where criminals are using firearms, so that kind of thing.
And folks over this side may know Gatwick Airport, and you were responsible for Gatwick Airport for a long time. Is that right?
No, that's not true. No. They were sort of next door to us, so there was a specific commander responsible for Gatwick. But the area that I was responsible for was just south of that. So yeah, so that was that.
So did that include East Grinstead?
Yeah, East Grinstead, if you know that.
So the Ashdown Forest and home of Winnie the Pooh?
Winnie the Pooh, indeed, absolutely. Yeah. I never saw him though.
I never saw him.
Although I now have a Cocker Spaniel, so we go walk around there sometimes, and that's fun.
Cool. Well, for those that are watching the video version, they may be wondering why I'm talking to another cop, but you don't look like a cop at the moment.
No,
so
not now. So yeah, 2015, I kind of. Well, if you've got a faith, you'd understand. If you haven't got a faith, you go, why did you do that? But I felt called into the church. So I had a piece of scripture given to me on 4 occasions, independently by different people. And I felt that God was calling me into the church. So reluctantly, because I didn't want to do it, I obeyed. I didn't want to look Jesus in the eye and say I didn't think I was being called. I guess that's what it was. And progressed into the sort of selection process, which is the Church of England, and here I am. So I'm now a priest in the Church of England, working in a town called Crawley, which is again just south of Gatwick Airport, and I'm what's called a curate, which is basically like an apprentice. So I work and support the main priest in charge there as part of my training. So I've been doing that for about 3 years. So went to college, theological college, and then did some training since then, and then so that's where I am. Yeah.
So that's the fascinating thing, and one of the reasons I wanted to chat, other than just to catch up after way too many years, but you've always been active. And if we go back to the police career side of things, you got to what's a very senior rank, relatively speaking, and you've been active. How did you deal with going from being a day-to-day cop to being an administrator? Because knowing you still want to be involved in the day-to-day.
Yeah. No, that's a really good question. I think I liken it to like flying a helicopter, and I think as you progress in organisations, particularly hierarchical organisations, I think the level of the altitude of the helicopter has to increase. I think so. As a sergeant, I had a small team of about 12 people, and then you're very much involved still in the day-to-day operational policing. But you're right. As you go higher up in an organisation, I think your leadership style changes from that of an operational leader into that of a strategic leader, and I think that and the trick is, I think, is for people as they progress to make that transition. So and I think we get it wrong sometimes when strategic leaders try to be operational leaders and operational leaders try to be strategic leaders. And I think also as a strategic leader, I think it's really important to, whilst you're flying the helicopter at a very high altitude, is to be able to have that overview of the operation, be that whatever sector you're in, and then but to spot things when they're going wrong, to spot things when they're going right, and then at that point land the helicopter, so that you can actually sort of get involved and put hands on again, get control, but then not stay there, not get stuck in the mud, but actually get back up to your altitude. Otherwise, if the tendency is to stay on the ground, then you lose that perspective. So I think that's the trick really for me.
So you're not really going down there to do the work. You're going down there to either support it, encourage it, engage it, but from a 30,000 foot perspective, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Somebody's going to tell me that helicopters won't fly.
I was going to say, do they fly that high? Maybe they do. Absolutely. I think that's the issue. It's and it's choosing those times to go down, and sometimes you can do that. I think sometimes I'd have a morning meeting, and bizarrely we used to call it morning prayers actually, which I do obviously now in a different capacity. And the meeting would be about all the critical incidents that have happened in the patch over the last 24 hours. And sometimes there'd be some critical incidents that I'd think, actually, I just want to go and speak to the cops about that. And I'd just maybe just write them a quick note on a bit of paper, just saying, great job last night, well done. And that has so much power. Or just like passing them in the corridor and going and knowing that they did that particular difficult piece of policing and just saying, do you know what you did last night was really good, well done. And that in itself, I think, is landing the helicopter and being noticed, but you're not getting involved. The military have a great expression. It's called the long screwdriver. So what they absolutely hate is having people over their shoulder with a long screwdriver fiddling with their job. So I tried not to. I didn't always succeed, to be honest. I was guilty of having a long screwdriver, but try not to tinker, but just support.
So, which means that you have to be like aware of a lot, and there's a lot of things that might pull you, but it's also, what did you use to stop allowing that pull to, drop down too low and start tinkering?
I think, you say you have to know a lot. I don't think you do. I think you have to trust the people who do know the detail. I think the risk of someone who has done the job before is that they've always got an opinion on it. And of course, there's never just one way to do a job, is there? Whereas I did an MBA and they used to call it the master of bugger all. You can't say that as a priest, can you? But I think there is something in that, is it's very generic. So I think what strategic leadership gives you is that generic oversight and the ability to understand the business, but not to understand the detail of the business.
Right.
And so, you understand that what's going on and what should be working, but not necessarily the intricacies of someone's job. And I think that's kind of healthy. So it's about trusting those people below you because they are the experts, not you.
And what did you put in place to make sure that you could trust them?
So I think it's just really interesting. I think this is where the difference between leadership and management, and there's loads of discussion around that, as I'm sure you and your listeners are fully aware. So I won't go into that one. But I think an important part of leadership is good management. And I think there's a distinction between leadership, management, and command. I think that all three are very different. And they all are on that sort of continuum of involvement by the leader. But the management for me is around, having the boring stuff in place. So having good strategy, having clear strategy, having good processes and procedures, and having those in place. Because if you haven't got those, then it all starts to unfold. And I think that at that point, then people start to, you're using energy which you don't need to use, and it doesn't provide that clarity. And so I think, having those boring management stuff is really, really important.
I like that. That's I see your ice axe on the back wall there, and you and I have climbed Harrison's Rocks down there in Sussex a few times. Yeah. But in order to enjoy it, you have to make sure that there's some stuff in place. Exactly. And you're saying the same kind of things. Let's put some boring stuff in place, and then we can enjoy doing what we're doing, and we can lead, and we can provide insight and vision and things on top of that.
And it's all that stuff. And it's maybe not exciting, it may not be sexy, but do you know what? It's good solid HR policy is really important. The way you induct your people into your organization is really important. Your financial management systems are really important, and your operational processes are really important. So all of that stuff is vital. and then you can start to be a bit creative, a bit going off piste.
So then you go from being a senior cop to retiring from the police service and jumping into being an apprentice in the church.
Yeah.
So how was that switch
something.
from going, I'm in charge of everything here, to I'm not in charge of anything? In fact, I'm the dog's body that now has to go make the coffee.
Oh, do you know what it was like? Literally one day, having all that authority and responsibility. So the next day, I was literally in a housing estate, which is like social housing. I don't know the context in America, and I was on the floor, on the carpet, setting out the dinky toys, the car toys for the kids group, and I was thinking, oh, this is different. But my issue is, I think I have an issue with pride, and actually I think it was God's way of helping me through that, to just sort of try and gain some humility. So that was good for me to do, and I think, do you know what? I think we should all get on the carpet and play with car toys, because I think, and whatever context that means, but I think there's something about that we're not our job. And particularly for those of us in leadership, there's a real danger that it becomes our identity. As a Christian, I believe that I'm a child of God. That's my identity. But as soon as we believe that our identity is tied up in what we do, I think it's really risky. I think it's built on sand, because actually that can go. Literally the week after I left the police, it was like, Marin Walker, who's he again? It's like the next person has come along and they're doing a cracking job, and it's not about us. It's really about who we're there to serve. So
yeah. It's I've often drawn two parallel lines for people in leadership. There's one of confidence, and the other one is of vulnerability or humility. And you have to keep them both parallel, because if you lose the humility, you become arrogant. And if you lose the confidence, then you just become, like, I don't know whether it's a weak or beneath you, but that parallel lines of both, that I'm confident in what I'm doing, and I'm humble and vulnerable at the same time.
I think it's also a gender issue that plays into this. Like, my experience is that women generally will go on the humility side, and men on the arrogance side. That's total generalization. But what I'm trying to say there is, I found people who are going for promotion, for example, women will often have to be encouraged, because they think, oh, I'm not quite good enough, and they so are. They have those skills, they have that ability, and they have to be encouraged. Whereas some men, and I'd include myself here, actually have to be pulled back a bit, saying, you're not quite ready yet, Martin. And so I don't know if that. I think there is some literature around that, but I think it's quite interesting that I think there is a gender difference on that one.
Yeah, there is an old story of people going for a job interview, and can you make this? And the man who's never made one before says, absolutely I can. And the woman who's made 1 million of them says, I think so. and that's the difference between the two approaches. Now, hopefully that's changed.
Absolutely. So as a leader, I think we need to recognize that, and therefore, if we look at our organizations, and certainly the police in England, it's getting better, but it's not there yet. And so is the church in England. It's getting better, but it's not there in terms of true representation of women across in senior leadership positions. So and that may be part of it. So being a senior leader, I think it's important to to recognize these nuances, and then to do your bit to make things right.
So you went from all this potential power and all the gold braid, as you might call it in the UK, or all the insignia, one day to playing with the Matchbox cars the next day, and humbling yourself. What lessons did you take from one job to the other?
I think at the end of the day, I think any job, actually, policing, or be it the church, or be it in whatever industry or sector that people are leading in, it's about people, and it's about ourselves. So I think it's that thing about we have to be able to lead ourselves before we lead others. We have to know ourselves. We have to be have that self-awareness about how we are, warts and all, and then to then be able to lead others and have that empathy with others. So I think policing is a wonderful career, and it deals with people in the sort of crisis moments of their lives, and also the happy moments and everything. And actually being a priest is much the same. We get the privilege of walking alongside people, the loved ones have just died, or when they're getting married, or when they're struggling with issues of life. And I think there's something about people and knowing people, which I think is transferable to both. But I think that's wider than just those two vocations. I think that applies right across the leadership spectrum.
Because it sounds like your journey has been as much a journey about you and your learning as it has about the service that you've been giving. And you know, you've shared a couple of times that you identified weaknesses and have gone after it. So it seems to be a thread there.
Yeah. And I think, again, that's what leaders should try to do. You know, if we have that arrogance that, yep, I'm all set, I'm all done, then of course the next day the world changes and it's moved on, isn't it? Yeah. But to accept the fact that actually it is lifelong learning. I liken it to children. My kids are now, in fact, in a couple of months' time, they will both be adults. That's scary. And when you're raising children, as I know you know, David, you know, you kind of suss out an 8-year-old how to parent an 8-year-old, and then they go and grow up and they're like 10.
Become 9.
Where did that come from? I don't know how to parent a 10-year-old, and that just keeps going. So I'm trying to figure out now how to, you know, parent a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old. It's a whole new ball game. Which I think that's the same with leadership.
I mean, I was going to say that applies completely across the board, doesn't it? You become a COO and then you get the job as a CEO, and you've never been that before. You have to learn to do it. And the first step should be being humble enough to recognize that you don't know everything you should be doing, and that you're going to trip up and make some mistakes.
Yeah, so good. I think that what I've noticed also, I don't know if you have, Dave, is that sometimes if you get someone who maybe they're a team leader role, so if you're in the police, that'll be a sergeant maybe, and they're very good at that. They're very good at operational leadership, and then they get promoted, and they've got a wider span of control and a wider a portfolio. And what they try and do is lead in the same way as they did as a sergeant when they were successful, but they just like work harder. So it's a bit like, you know, they're on a push bike, a pedal cycle, and they were great as a sergeant. They were the best cyclist out, but then now they've been promoted to a middle management level, and they realise that I just pedaled faster then, whereas actually they need to ditch the pedal cycle and get themselves a moped, you know, a motorbike. So I think that's the difference, is that actually the skills that you bring lower up in an organization, they may provide some benefit, but sometimes you just have to ditch the bike.
Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago talking about, and you should see how American I've become, going from quarterback to coach, and that each promotion is like going from being the quarterback to the coach. So that sergeant is the quarterback, and if he still operates as the quarterback when he becomes an inspector, then everything's going to come crumbling down, because the new sergeant should be the new quarterback, and you have to learn how to be the coach now at each level. So you've taken that and you've gone from being somebody walking the streets helping people to somebody administrating loads of people walking the streets helping people to back onto the streets helping people.
Pretty much, yeah.
What leadership kind of rules have you kept throughout that time?
I think it's the good thing about the police is that you're a number one, and then you're a number two, and then a number one, number two. So as you progress up an organization, you're the top of one triangle, if you like, if you get what I mean, but you're also a bottom of another triangle. So you're a team leader, but you're also a member of another team higher up. And that works in hierarchical organizations, maybe less so in flat organizations, I don't know. But I think it's just knowing that actually my job at the moment is to support the priest in charge. So I'm not the priest in charge. So it's what I can do. It's where I can fill the gaps to support him. So and recognizing, you know, again, sort of almost like flying the helicopter high to spot where the gaps are, to spot where he has strengths and where he has areas for improvement, and then just filling the gaps. So I think that's one thing I'm trying to do at the moment is to I'm sure there's a quarterback analogy there somewhere. But you know what I mean?
And in the Church of England now, that may be he or she above you as well, of course.
Totally, yeah.
So which is cool.
We have bishops now, which is great.
Yeah, but I think that's insightful, because what you've said is the first thing I have to do is to make sure I'm looking after myself and I can do my job, and then the more I can give some cover for my boss as well, and make them look good, the more likely we both are to be successful.
Yeah, totally. And I agree with what you just said. Apart from one thing, we are successful. I think that it has to come back to character and humility, whereby actually it's not about us. And the whole Christian ethos is around, actually it isn't about us. It's about it's about Jesus. And for I think for all leaders, the leaders who see it for the greater good, leaders who are there to serve, leaders who are there because they want to do the right thing, because they want to make their organization better, because they want to make society better, they're the leaders who leave the legacy. Those who are in it for themselves, or who are to make me look good, or for me to earn money, I think it just crumbles. The first bit of tension, the first time it gets really tough, that's where it all falls down. Whereas if in the tough times, if it's about, do you know what, it's not about me, it's about society, it's about people, it's about, I'm here to serve. That whole theme of service, I think, in leadership is really vital. That's sort of primary for me, I guess.
We use that as one of the continuums of our model of choice, which is at one end is a self-focused choice, and at the other end is a greater good focused choice.
Nice.
And that's the first decision of a leader, is to be at the greater good end of that continuum. When you're making choices, whatever choice you may make, it should be with a greater good viewpoint, which links into your service.
So, yeah, I love it. Yeah, you're spot on there, Dave.
Cool. And how much of this goes all the way back to 1984?
Oh, do you know what? It's embarrassing that we probably all look back at our lives and just reflect on the mistakes we made. I think, oh, did I really do that? So that's just the wisdom of getting old and seeing mistakes. Try not to repeat them.
That goes in my mind hand in glove with the learning. If I'm going to learn, I'm going to recognize mistakes I've made early on, and I won't look back on them too embarrassingly. I'll just look at them as part of my learning. And you and I both know that some of our best learning comes from the mistakes we make.
Totally. And it's about the I guess it's, as a leaders as well, it's about allowing others to make those mistakes, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that whole leadership continuum about, the autocratic, democratic, Taliban and Schmidt, I think, the idea of you can lead by doing and being in charge, or you can lead by delegating and allowing others to take the lead. And I think whilst you might do a great job if you do it all yourself, actually allowing others the permission to fail is so important, I think, because it's only that in the growth of failing is that we're there, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a few episodes ago we talked about creating the environment for learning and critical thinking, and that should be the job of the leader. And part of that environment of learning is, I'm going to screw up and trip up. As long as I learn from it, then that's okay. Well, cool. Well, thank you, Martin. And it's good to catch up. I appreciate you being here, and maybe we'll catch up some other time when you have another major career change. But in your current stats, it'll be 30 years. So who knows where it'll go there. It's really good to connect. I appreciate your insight on leadership and your insight on making that transition. And thank you.
Thank you, Dave, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.